They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Yes, Mr. President. I think we understand where you're coming from. What are your thoughts, Steve?
Well, Glenn, you know the president as well as anybody, and you can tell he's put a lot of his spirit into this, a lot of his focus, and he is worked up. I mean, I have never seen him, quite frankly, this mad on any topic. He's really worked up. And I think he, really went overtime, went with, worked with the Qataris, I think also UAE, MBZ, and got to work at this ceasefire. He wants everybody to put down their guns. And, of course, they're both slugging it out. And I think that what, Mark Caputo over at Axios was reporting even more than that display going to Marine One to head to NATO. I think he had a phone call with Netanyahu and really got on him about this. So, this thing's very tenuous, but the president has gone the extra yard to make sure everybody, puts down their guns and have both sides try to figure this out.
I saw a tweet from him this morning that said, Israel, do not, follow through on these bombs. And I've never seen him do this before. Do not do it. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. If for anybody who ever says that, Donald Trump's being led by those Jews and Israel's telling him, no, Donald Trump is clearly the one in charge here. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think let's discuss that. But I think on this right here, people should take that as a papal bull. I've never seen him actually ever do that, even in the Ukraine situation, things we got with the CCP, the Russians, even some of the tougher situations with Soleimani and others before in the first term. Some of those true social posts were pretty blunt. And like I say, when President Trump is worked up like this, particularly when he has put so much time and he's working for peace, he must already put the guns down. People should take this as a papal bull. I mean, it's that serious.
I want to come back to what we were, you said, let's discuss that. And I do want to discuss that. But before we do, let me just follow up here. You keep saying that, he spent so much time on. I think he has risked more in this last week with his own base than I've seen him put. I mean, he put all of the chips on the table. I mean, this could have been an absolute disaster. Who knows? Maybe it is in the end. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's, a Nobel Prize another one that he should win. But the base is so divided on this. And I think that's part of the frustration, too, is he put all of the chips on the table. Can we just get people to do what they say they're going to do? Would you agree with that?
I would agree, and I think it's even beyond the politics of the base. I mean, Glenn, you know better than anybody how torn, particularly the non-interventionists, are on this topic. But it's actually, as commander-in-chief and the resources and the assets and the men and women in harm's way, and particularly, as I've argued, we're already at the beginning of the kinetic part of the Third World War. Hell, we got 2 million. If you look at 1939 to June of 41, when the Wehrmacht went to Russia, from Poland to Russia, we've got 2 million people dead or wounded in Ukraine, 1 million on each side. I mean, look at the Houthis in the Red Sea. I mean, this is much. We're already in the kinetic part of the Third World War, and now this arc of instability. You've got Kashmir in Pakistan. I mean, President Trump is going out of his way to try to be a peacemaker here and to bring this thing to a conclusion so people can start to negotiate. You saw the beginnings of that, or what he did in the Middle East trip. Yes, it's definitely politics and internal politics and the MAGA movement, and you're as familiar with that as anybody. But I think it's far deeper than that, and he put it all on the table, and I think we have to question why the hell we're even here right now. Why on the 24th of June in the year of our Lord 2025, we're in the situation with 10 million illegal alien invaders on Biden's watch that we got to deport from the country. These neo-Confederates running California, these sanctuary cities, the big, beautiful bill, which has got so many huge issues we have to address. We haven't spent a second talking about this in weeks. So many things going on, and this is it's sucked up all this time as a active shooting war at will.
So, because I've been listening to you, and I think we agree on a lot of stuff here. Neither one of us wanted him to drop the bombs. You're stronger on that than I am, but now that it's been dropped, now we just have to deal with whatever we're going to deal with. But I think we both stand in the same place on my support when I read in the scriptures, those who will bless Israel, I will bless; those who curse Israel. That doesn't mean I go down every path that Israel wants. I don't have to agree with them. I don't have to do anything. The way I believe I'm to bless them is to say they have a right to exist. Let's not do another Holocaust and allow them to use their own power for self-defense. They've demonstrated they can do that. We don't have to get involved in everything that they're doing. Would you agree that is a reasonable stance, or where's the nuance?
I'd even take it a little further. I mean, I'm not just personally, but the war. We're adamant supporters of Israel and the state of Israel, and particularly given. I mean, if you think from October 7th, if you look at the Israel in Gaza, which is messy, we've been a big supporter of what they're doing against Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. Our only message has been, when you got to go through hell, go through as quickly as possible. Let's get it done.
Correct.
In Judea, Samaria, what they've done with Hezbollah is monumental, because Hezbollah, as you know, Glenn, was considered, I guess, one of the best light infantry in the world. What they've done in southern Syria, the Israelis have done militarily, I think, and geopolitically, extraordinary work since the surprise attack. But there's just so many questions about this, and so many questions about why we're so tangled up in this thing right now. That and I think they just have to be answered. I think they got to be answered because to continue to support Israel and look, the support to date, really, we don't have a formal alliance. We have a special relationship. They're essentially a protectorate of the United States, and if that's the case, and we should not be in the protectorate business. We should. Europe is going to NATO right now because they finally guaranteed to pay 5%. I mean, think of this huge. As you remember, Glenn, they laughed at us for paying 2%, which they agreed to in President Trump's first term. And one of the points was we can't have Western Europe and the elites in Western Europe as a protector of the United States. We just can't afford it anymore. He's making huge moves there. And that's why I think in this situation, we really have to go through and see exactly how this came about. And I think it'll be will illuminate how we go forward to sort this mess out.
So do you think we would have dropped the bomb if Israel could have dropped that bomb? I mean, that bomb was made for that particular run, and we have been rehearsing that run for 15 plus years, specifically. And nobody else has a weapon that was built for for that particular drop. If Israel could have had it, do you think Donald Trump would have gotten involved? Because I don't think he would have.
Let me take a slightly different direction. In 79, my destroyer, I was in the Pacific Fleet, and we were going for our second Westpac to turn over to the 7th Fleet, and we got the call on November 4th. We were in Dejron 23, the Little Beavers, the famous Arleigh Burke destroyer squadron. We got the call that the hostages had been taken, and it took us a couple of months to get there, but we were one of the first. We went with one of the first battle groups ever to get to the North Arabian Sea, and we were there. I think we rotated out a month before the assault, but we practiced the assault every day. And Glenn, you could tell at the time, this is like, you're not in Kansas anymore. I mean, it is the scale of the place is so big. It's so forbidding, the ocean, and you never see the sun. And It's so complicated. As you know, that one was a complete abject failure. And I think every junior officer and non-commissioned officer on any of those ships in the battle group could have told you 90 days before the launch that it was going to be a disaster, just given the logistics of it. The tell to me in this was the Tomahawk missiles that went to the third site and destroyed it above ground. I mean, essentially, Israel had done nothing to take out any of the nuclear facilities. And let's go back to where I think we have to get to the heart of it. Is why did this come out of nowhere? The intelligence, and we're told that the intelligence is different. And this has been said now by Marco Rubio and other people, that the intelligence is different than the intelligence that IC community had. And today they're going to have, classified hearings with Tulsi Gabbard and Ratcliffe. And my understanding is Ratcliffe and the CIA presented additional intelligence that said this was absolutely emergency. It had to happen. And that's why the strike had to happen last Thursday, although it shouldn't be lost on anybody that the strike itself didn't look like it was so much to take out the nuclear facilities. It was essentially a decapitation strike to the senior military, maybe not to the religious that run the state. And I thought that was just very suspicious, including the fact that President Trump had a negotiating meeting set for Sunday. Now, it wasn't going well. He felt like he was getting tapped along. But the first thing we heard is that Witkoff couldn't have a meeting because all the negotiators had been killed. Now, it turned out later one of the senior guys was not. But I think we got to find out that, what was the emergency? Why did this actually have to happen? What was the intel that said that they were going to get a bomb? Surely because Beatty went on Brett Baer on Sunday night and said they're 12 to 13 months away, which is what he's traditionally said. If that was the case, that's a very different. We had not gone up the escalatory scale and coercive diplomacy. We certainly hadn't gone to economic warfare, particularly, Glenn, as you know, cutting off, not allowing to ship oil to the Chinese Communist Party, which I think is 60% of their cash flow. There's so many things up the escalatory ladder. And if you want regime change, I always think the best way to do it is through economic warfare, where President Trump, got so tough with him when he dropped out of the JCPOA. And that's why in 22, you had the first time I think they had a major revolt in the streets. Now, it only lasted for a couple of weeks, but that was the big part of that was because of the sanctions President Trump put in. Then we get into this situation after the bombing run, and what's concerning about the bombing run is why are Los Angeles class submarines hitting them with 30 Tomahawks on a facility that's above ground? And I would like to see the bomb damage report. Now, President Trump, I believe we obliterated it, but I haven't seen a ballistic missile capability that could get to the United States tomorrow or San Francisco tomorrow. I think this whole thing was from the beginning, and I think if you look at Fox News, which I really fault here, this was clearly about regime change. I think the Netanyahu government saw an opportunity to do regime change, and until I see otherwise and see information otherwise that it was an absolute emergency and had to happen, that's the reason I was really against any type of military engagement. Now, it turns out magnificent logistics, and people don't realize how complicated that was and how incredible. But President Trump, I think it's one and done, and now he's got a ceasefire. And he's very specific. I think he came out today. I think Bloomberg put out that he said there's no regime change. So, but my point is the opportunity cost. This is going to suck us into, if not, open combat. This is going to suck us in just the mind share of President Trump to have to engage here when we have so many other pressing, massive problems besides the new war in the Middle East.
I want to get into that, but I have two things. I got to take a break, and then I come back with two things.
Sure.
First of all, I think this is why President Trump was so angry today. He sees that Israel is going for regime change, and I don't think he's going to get involved in anything regarding regime change. He knows that could be an absolute disaster. Could be great, could be an absolute disaster, and more likely an absolute disaster. And maybe that's why he is so angry with that. I mean, you have seen President Trump in more situations than most people, and he has even said, I didn't really know what I was up against on my first term, but I am now. I have a hard time believing that he's going to be duped by the deep state. Do you think he is being duped, or just being moved around by the deep state?
I don't think, and first of all, I don't think it's Israel. I'm a huge supporter of Israel.
Okay, good.
and the
Okay,
Jewish
good.
people. But they're.
I know that. I didn't mean to imply anything differently.
No. But here's
okay,
so I don't think it's Israel. Here's my concern. My concern, and I have recommended, just like when President Reagan. Listen, why did the hostage crisis fail? One of the reasons Jimmy Carter, being an engineer, just had one source of information. He got one source of information from the apparatus. They had horrible groupthink, and they made epic, fundamental bad decisions that led to a catastrophe and really hurt America for decades afterwards, and led to Carter's failed presidency. What did President Reagan do when he first got in? Bill Casey and people around him were pretty street smart, savvy people, said we need to set up a Team B. We can't just rely upon the apparatus. Has been such failures, particularly the fact they were quite critical of Nixon and Kissinger, and even Dayton and rapprochement and everything. Remember, this plan was eventually going to lead to taking down the evil empire. How did that start? It started with the Team B to make sure that you had a fresh set of eyes that could go through the analysis. And just like you go to a doctor to get a second opinion, it's the old measure twice and cut once. And I think President Trump's not being manipulated. I'm just not so sure that all the information that's coming to him is the information. Just like I say, let's see where the chips fall on this. I may be wrong, but I would like to. I think it's incumbent that John Ratcliffe and the CIA, come for whatever this emergency. This emergency they were going to break out, have a bomb, have a weapon against us. Of course, listen. The mullahs and the Ayatollah are bad guys. Remember in the Surgeons, they talk about a guy gets shot in the back and say, hey, maybe he deserves shooting. Hey, these guys are as bad as they get. There's no, you can't take issue. But once you get into regime change, you're talking about we're non-interventionists for a reason.
Right.